My name is Evelyn Hart, 32 years old, data compliance analyst, single mother to a 6-year-old girl who still believes monsters live only in storybooks. I used to believe that too until tonight. Glass rained over my desk like ice. The window had shattered inward, scattering shards across the glowing screen. The upload bar blinked 97%. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, slick with sweat. Lucy crouched under the table, tiny hands clamped over her ears. Almost there. Baby, I whispered, forcing calm into a voice that shook. Outside, boots hammered across the porch 3 sets, maybe 4. A man's voice barked something I couldn't make out over the wind. I shut off the light. The room plunged into darkness except for the pale glow of the progress bar creeping toward completion. 98%. The laptop hummed, fragile and defiant. I reached for the flash drive dangling from its port just as a bullet tore through the drywall, splintering the photo of Lucy's first day of school. She whimpered, and I slid beneath the desk, pulling her close. My pulse thundered in my throat. Keep your eyes closed, sweetheart. Another shot. Plaster dust fell onto her hair like snow. I grabbed the edge of the desk, ready to drag us toward the cellar door when the laptop chimed a single, bright sound slicing through the chaos. 100%. The transfer was done. I slammed the lid shut and yanked the drive free, tucking it into my jacket. For a heartbeat, everything went still. No footsteps, no shouting. Only the hiss of rain through the broken window. Then the memory hit Rowan Lake, my CEO, standing across from me just hours earlier. His hands trembled as he slid a sealed envelope toward me, voice low and urgent. Don't open this here. Go home. Pack a bag. You have 24 hours. I'd thought he was firing me. I'd even laughed, nervously, before realizing he couldn't meet my eyes. Now, as smoke drifted through the cracked door and the scent of gunpowder filled the room, I finally understood. Whatever was hidden in that envelope hadn't destroyed my job. It had destroyed the life I thought was safe, and it had already begun. 24 hours earlier, my life had been painfully ordinary. I'd arrived at Stratagem Capital before sunrise, the office still half asleep, rows of glass cubicles reflecting the pale Seattle rain. I liked being early. It gave me a head start before the noise, before the small talk that always made me feel like I was speaking a language no one else used. At 32, I'd learned how to disappear in plain sight. My spreadsheets balanced to the decimal. My reports were precise, unremarkable, forgettable exactly how I wanted them. Every minute saved at work meant an extra minute to reach Lucy's daycare before closing. Stability, not ambition, had become the goal. That morning, I was halfway through reconciling a client transfer when the notification appeared, Rowan Lake requests to see you. No explanation. Just a meeting link and a timestamp, 9:30 a.m. Rowan never spoke to analysts directly. His name lived in internal memos and quarterly speeches, not in personal summons. My stomach tightened as I clicked save and straightened my blazer, wondering if I'd misfiled something catastrophic. His assistant didn't even look up when I entered the executive floor. He's waiting, she said, voice clipped. Rowan's office was all steel and silence. He stood by the window, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the skyline as if expecting it to collapse. When he turned, I saw something I'd never imagined on his face, fear. Close the door, he said. I did. The click of the latch sounded too final. He moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a thick white envelope. My name was written across it in his tight, deliberate handwriting. Do exactly as I say, he murmured. Don't open this here. Go home. Pack a bag. You have 24 hours. I waited for the rest a reprimand, an explanation, a joke, but none came. His hands trembled as he slid the envelope toward me. Mr. Lake. He shook his head. Just go. 10 minutes later, security escorted me out of the building without a word. My badge was deactivated, My inbox was gone. In the drizzle outside, I stood clutching that envelope, the ink beginning to blur under the rain, realizing that whatever was inside had already changed everything. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the envelope, its edges wrinkled and damp from the rain. Lucy's crayons were scattered across the surface. A half-finished drawing of a house and 2 stick figures smiling under a sun that didn't exist outside our window. The normalcy of it made the thing in my hands feel heavier, almost radioactive. For an hour, I'd convinced myself not to open it. Maybe Rowan had lost his mind. Maybe this was some elaborate HR stunt or a misunderstanding that would embarrass me tomorrow. But the echo of his voice, low, urgent, almost broken, refused to fade. I tore the flap. Inside was a small stack of items bound with a rubber band. On top, a plane ticket. Seattle to Denver. Departure. 7:15 p.m. One way. Beneath it, an envelope of cash, 50 crisp $100 bills, edges sharp, untouched. Then a black prepaid phone. New. Cold in my palm. Across the screen, a single contact already saved, call only. This! My breath caught as I pulled out the last object, a glossy photograph. It was Lucy, standing outside her school that same morning, wearing the blue raincoat I'd zipped for her at 7:40 a.m. Her backpack hung crooked on one shoulder. Her face turned slightly away. The background was unmistakable, our neighborhood crosswalk, the one I passed every day. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. Someone had been there, watching us, close enough to see her freckles. A folded sheet of paper slipped from the envelope and fluttered onto the table. The handwriting was unfamiliar, hurried. They know what you saw. Do not stay in Seattle past midnight. Trust no one. I reread it until the words lost meaning, then looked up, expecting someone to be at the window. The street outside was quiet, just the rhythmic sound of rain on the glass. I pressed my hands to my face, fighting the tremor in them. Whatever Rowan was afraid of, it was now inside my house. The clock read 6:04 p.m. The ticket was for 7:15, and Lucy's backpack still hung by the door. I couldn't move for a long moment. The clock ticked, the rain thinned, and the city lights blinked through the blinds like signals meant only for me. I tried to breathe, to think logically. What had I seen? What could I possibly have done to trigger this? My mind retraced the last few days at Stratagem. I'd been reviewing flagged accounts for compliance, a cluster of dormant entities suddenly reactivated under a project labeled Orion Futures. The transfers looked harmless at first, but the timestamps were odd. The sender IDs masked under offshore designations. I'd reported it, briefly, to my department head, who brushed it off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Executive-level audit. Evelyn, not your concern. Now I understood why I hadn't been CC'd again. A sound outside snapped me back. An engine idled low and steady, the kind of hum that didn't belong in a residential street after dark. I stepped to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain. A black SUV sat under the street lamp, its headlights off, its windshield reflecting nothing. My skin prickled. That's when the prepaid phone vibrated on the table. I hesitated, then picked it up. Hello. A woman's voice, calm but tight, came through. They're outside your building. Do not turn on any lights. Take one bag and leave through the service stairs. Now. My throat closed. Who is this? No time. You have less than 5 minutes. Trust me, Ms. Hart. This isn't about your job anymore. The line went dead. I turned toward Lucy's room. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, coloring, oblivious to the fear that had rooted itself in every corner of my body. I crouched beside her, forcing my voice steady. Sweetheart, we're going on a surprise trip. Pack your favorite sweater and your stuffed fox. Okay. She giggled, thinking it was a game. I stuffed the cash, ticket, and phone into my jacket, then scooped up our passports and keys. The stairwell reeked of dust and old paint as we slipped out the back door. Rain whispered over the metal steps. I didn't look back. but I could feel the SUV's engine still purring through the night like a quiet, patient predator. The station was nearly empty, just the echo of rainwater dripping from the steel rafters and the low hum of a vending machine struggling against the cold. I kept Lucy close, her small hand warm and sticky in mine. The departure board flickered. Seattle to Denver, 7:15 p.m., delayed by 15 minutes. That tiny mercy gave us enough time to disappear into the crowd that didn't exist. I bought 2 tickets in cash and chose the last car, hoping anonymity could still protect us. Lucy pressed her face to the window as the train lurched forward, the city lights dissolving into a smear of gold and shadow. For the first time since the envelope, I let myself exhale. Maybe, if we reached Denver, I could figure out what Rowan had been trying to save us from. When the attendant passed, I kept my head down, pretending to read. But someone else was watching. A man sat diagonally across the aisle, mid-40s, worn jacket, the kind of presence that didn't fill space but sharpened it. His eyes met mine once, steady and assessing, before he looked away. We crossed through mountain darkness for nearly an hour. Lucy fell asleep on my lap. The rhythm of the train almost calmed me until I heard my name. Ms. Hart. My head snapped up. The man was leaning slightly forward, voice low but clear. You don't have to pretend anymore. I froze. I'm with Rowan Lake, he said. My name is Daniel Cross. The name meant nothing, yet the way he spoke it carried weight, measured, deliberate, the voice of someone used to danger. How do I know that's true? He reached into his coat slowly and slid a folded photo across the aisle. It was of Rowan, taken years earlier, standing beside the same man, on the back, written in the same firm handwriting as on my envelope. If she's reading this, protect her. Daniel met my eyes. You're in more danger than you think, Evelyn. And tonight was only the beginning. The train thundered through a tunnel, lights flickering. For a moment, his face vanished in the dark, then reappeared, calm, waiting for my answer. By the time the train reached the Colorado border, dawn had drained the night of its color. Daniel guided us through the narrow aisles without speaking, his hand steady on Lucy's shoulder as if he'd done this kind of extraction before. A rented sedan waited in a gravel lot beyond the station. We drove in silence for hours, winding through pine-thick mountains until the world felt too far away to find us. The safe house sat behind a curtain of aspens, small enough to vanish into the trees. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and dust. Daniel dropped his bag on the table, pulled out a laptop, and gestured for me to sit. You accessed something 2 days ago, he said. Do you remember the name Orion Futures? I nodded. It was part of a dormant chain. I flagged it for irregular activity. His eyes lifted. That flag triggered a system alert across 3 agencies. You weren't supposed to see it. Evelyn, he typed a command, and the screen filled with numbers routing codes, account names, wire confirmations stamped with Stratagem's logo. Every few lines, the same signature appeared, Harland Consulting Fund. Victor Harland, Daniel said quietly. The name struck me like a slap. Senator Victor Harland, economic reform advocate, televised town halls, smiling promises about transparency. The man who'd visited our firm last year to speak about ethical finance? Daniel clicked to another file rows of transfers looping through offshore accounts and back into corporate subsidiaries. This is the architecture of a laundering network that's been active for over a decade. Billions moved through private firms like Stratagem. Rowan discovered it 3 years ago. I felt the air tighten. What happened to him? Then Daniel's jaw tensed. They made an example of his wife. The room went quiet except for the wind in the trees. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a pulse over the senator's name. Every cell in my body wanted to turn away, to pretend none of it existed. But Lucy's soft breathing from the next room kept me still. Whatever this was, it wasn't just data anymore. It was blood disguised as balance sheets. Daniel said nothing for a long time after showing me the data. He just stared at the laptop screen, as though waiting for something only he could sense. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a flash drive sealed in black tape, and slid it across the table toward me. "Rowan left this in my care," he said quietly. "He recorded it 2 nights before you were fired." My pulse jumped. Daniel connected the drive, and the screen filled with static before clearing into an image Rowan sitting in a dim hotel room, a bruise darkening his jaw, his tie loosened like he'd run out of air. "If you're seeing this, Evelyn," he began, voice rough. "They found me, but not you. Good. That means Daniel got to you in time." He paused, rubbing his forehead. "I never told you why I hired you. It wasn't your resume. It was your audits, the one where you refused to alter a client report, even after pressure from your supervisor. I needed someone with a spine, someone who still believed in doing the right thing when no one's watching." The camera wobbled slightly as he leaned closer. "They think I'm a clueless executive. Let them. That ignorance keeps you alive. It's how I've stayed one step ahead." My throat tightened. The man I'd silently mocked in meetings for missing details, for forgetting names, for staring too long at nothing he'd been pretending all along. Every absent-minded pause, every misplaced question, had been cover. Rowan's gaze flicked away for a second, his expression softening. "If Daniel reached you, trust him. There's a file that completes the link. Your access logs were the last piece we needed. Once they're combined, the truth can't be buried again." The screen dimmed. He looked straight into the camera one last time. "You may never hear from me again, but know this integrity is dangerous only because it shines light where others want darkness." The video ended abruptly, leaving only my reflection in the blank screen. For the first time since leaving Seattle, I felt something heavier than fear settle inside me. Debt, not of money, but of courage. Night fell fast in the mountains. The air turned sharp, and the silence pressed against the cabin walls like a held breath. Daniel had been pacing since dusk, checking the same perimeter again and again. Lucy was asleep on the couch, her stuffed fox tucked beneath her chin. I tried to convince myself the quiet meant safety, but when the first pair of headlights sliced through the trees, I knew I'd been wrong. Daniel's voice snapped through the dark. "Get Lucy below now." The world erupted before I could speak. Glass shattered, the front window exploding inward. A bullet tore through the wooden beam above my head. I ran for Lucy, scooping her into my arms as Daniel fired back from the kitchen. The roar of gunfire drowned out everything: the wind, my heartbeat, her frightened cries. He kicked open a trapdoor hidden beneath the rug. "Go!" he shouted. I hesitated, my body frozen between panic and disbelief. "Evelyn, move." I climbed down the ladder into the cellar, the air below damp and metallic. Lucy clung to me, her small body shaking. Above us, the floor groaned under heavy boots. I heard Daniel reload, heard the thud of someone slamming against the door. Then silence. A heartbeat later, the explosion hit. The ceiling split open, raining splinters and heat. I threw myself over Lucy as fire licked through the cracks, the smell of smoke filling the air. "Somewhere above," Daniel shouted, his voice fading into the chaos. When the noise finally died, only the crackle of fire remained. My lungs burned. I reached for the emergency phone mounted on the wall, hands trembling, and pressed the button. The line clicked, and a voice I hadn't expected to hear again came through, hoarse but alive. "Evelyn," Rowan said, "you have 2 hours. They'll regroup. Decide hide forever, or finish this." The line went dead, leaving only static and the echo of his words. 2 hours. I looked at Lucy, soot streaked across her cheeks, eyes wide but dry. I brushed her hair from her face and felt the decision forming, steady and absolute, somewhere deep in my chest. The smoke had begun to thin, curling like pale ghosts through the cracks in the floorboards above. The The fire was dying, but so was the quiet. Outside, faint engines roared back to life, the sound of men regrouping. I could hear them shouting orders, metal striking against metal. They weren't leaving until we were gone. Lucy leaned against me, half asleep from exhaustion, her fingers still locked around mine. I pressed my lips to her hair, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Then I heard it, a muffled thud from above, heavy footsteps descending the stairs. My heart stopped. But then came the voice. "Evelyn, it's me." Daniel appeared through the smoke, face bloodied, one arm pressed against his ribs. He looked like he'd crawled out of a grave. I ran to him, helped him down the last steps. His breath came in ragged gasps, but his eyes were alive with purpose. "They think we're dead," he said, wincing. "That's our window. Rowan's key, he sent it before the fire." He dropped a scorched flash drive into my hand. Its surface was half melted, the label burned away. "This completes the chain," he whispered. We moved to the metal desk at the center of the bunker. The laptop still glowed, waiting. I connected the drive. Lines of encrypted text cascaded down the screen. The final prompt appeared in stark white letters. "Press Enter to release global data." Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. Boots crunched over gravel. Lucy stirred, murmuring my name. I felt Daniel's hand steady on my shoulder. "This is it," he said. I looked at Lucy, her face smudged with soot, her eyes so impossibly trusting watching me. "We finish this together," I told her. My finger hovered for one breath, two. Then I pressed enter. The screen erupted in motion files transferring, networks connecting, agencies lighting up in sequence. 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%. Daniel exhaled, collapsing against the wall, somewhere beyond the mountains. Faint sirens rose and multiplied, echoing through the night. The data was gone, every account, every name, every crime unleashed into the world. For the first time in months, the air didn't taste like fear. It tasted like truth. The news broke 3 weeks later. Every screen, every radio station, every headline carried the same name: Senator Victor Harland arrested in global corruption scandal. The footage showed him stepping out of a private jet in handcuffs. His once confident smile hollowed into disbelief. It should have felt like victory, but all I felt was quiet. Daniel had vanished after the upload, disappearing the way people trained for shadows do. I didn't ask where he went. Some debts can only be paid in silence. Lucy and I were relocated to a small town north of Spokane, a place where the air smelled of pine and the lake reflected every color of the sky. She started school again, making friends, laughing easily. The world called what we'd done a historic leak, but to me, it was simply surviving the night. I woke early one morning to find an envelope on the porch, the edges damp with dew. My name was written in a handwriting I knew instantly neat, deliberate, unhurried. Rowan Lake. Inside was a single page. You were never a pawn. You were the proof that integrity still matters. The world will forget headlines, but not the echoes of truth you set free. Live quietly. Live fully. There was no signature, only a faint coffee stain in the corner, one last imperfect human mark from a man I'd once thought heartless. I placed the letter on the windowsill. The rising sun spilled through it, turning the paper almost translucent, the ink glowing like threads of gold. Lucy's laughter drifted in from outside, bright and real. I stood there for a long time, letting the warmth find its way through the glass. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for footsteps or gunfire. The world was still, and it was enough.